are there tactics or advice that you give to founders to try to different things that they can do?
I think fundamentally, one of the other things that people tend to get wrong is, or I should say lore in Silicon Valley isn't quite correct on, is there's this lore that you should grind eternally and then eventually something will work. And the reality is most of the companies, not all, but the vast majority of companies I've been involved with that ended up working pretty early. And once they started working, they just kept working. And then every once in a while, every company will have that crisis 2-3 years in, or they need to shift the business model or the customer base or whatever. But for a period of time, it's going to work, and it tends to work pretty fast. And so I think that's where people end up spending years and years and years of life just grinding away on something that isn't going to work, because maybe it'll work if I do these 3 more tweaks. And maybe it'll work if this month it'll finally, keep going. And for a very small number of cases that happens, but for the vast majority, it works immediately or near immediately, right? And so if you're 3-4 years in and you're still kind of grinding on every single thing, it's not working, right? And maybe you can tell in 2 years. It depends on the type of company, right? Consumer product, you can tell very fast, right? And so I think that's one of the things that people kind of mislead themselves and people that they work with about. I think the other piece of it is when times are tough, some of the best advice you can give somebody is just keep going no matter what. For example, now if we go into a recession, a lot of customers may stop buying, things may slow down. That's going to be normal, and you have to just power through that. When times are good, the worst advice you can give somebody is keep going no matter what, because there's enormous opportunity cost on your time, and most things don't work. And most of the time, you should actually figure out, when do you give up? And when should you actually quit? And it's really hard to know, because you always think next quarter, we just do 2 more things, right? But over the last 4 or 5 years, there's too much advice going in the opposite direction of keep going no matter what. It's no big deal. And there was always more capital to fund you. And so I think people ended up wasting years of their lives because of that, because of the bad advice given to keep going no matter what. Just keep grinding. You'll find it someday.
And it's interesting. Most people that end up, I've heard you talk about this as well, but when you pivot or try to iterate, most people iterate around the problem set that's in front of them, right? It's hard if you're starting a ed tech company to then pivot into defense tech or whatever it is, because this is the world that you know. But the answer might be that you're in a bad market, right? That there isn't anything that exists over here, and you need to go find somewhere else to go, right?
Yeah, totally. And if you pivot, to your point, you may want to pivot across markets, but then you have to ask yourself, well, should I just reset my company? Should I restart it? Should I shut it down? Should I get different investors who understand that market segment? Should I hire different people who want to work in it? And so a lot of people, when they pivot too, they bring the whole ship with them. And sometimes that works out fine, but often it actually is a detriment and a bit of a drag. And so you kind of have to figure out, when do you make those transitions or jumps, and when do you just kind of say, okay, I'm going to restart everything and I'm going to start a little bit fresh.